On the 1st of March, 1954, in the Bikini Atoll, the United States would test its largest thermonuclear device, and the 5th largest bomb in history, with its Castle Bravo bomb. But they had no way of knowing that they were about to bomb Japanese citizens. Likely as close as 80 kilometers east of Bikini Atoll, the tuna fishing vessel Daigo Fukuryū Maru was laying out its catch. The crew would remember that day as the day the sun rose in the west. It was a day none of them would forget, and would ravage their bodies for decades. Fishing vessel Daigo Fukuryū Maru, or Lucky Dragon No. 5, started her life in 1947 in Koza, Wakayama. She was originally named Kotoshiro Maru, but was later bought by a different company and transferred to Misaki. She was of wooden construction and weighed 140 tons. She was 93.7 feet, or 28.5 meters long, and 19 feet, or 5.9 meters at the beam. She had a 250 horsepower diesel engine and could move at 5 knots. Initially built to fish for bonito, she was later redesigned for tuna fishing. Under the new name, the Daigo completed 4 successful tuna fishing voyages, but on her 5th voyage, the trip was quickly marred with uncertainty. Before setting out, the ship's experienced captain had to pass on the trip due to needing a hemorrhoid surgery. He was replaced by 22-year-old Tsutsui Koyukichi, which prompted 5 of the more senior crew members to walk off, refusing to work with the young captain. They had no way of knowing at this time just how wise of a choice this had been. The crew scrambled for replacements, finding enough to disembark on the 22nd of January, 1954. The 23-man crew were all relatively young, ranging in ages from 18 to 39, the average age being about 25. Only 7 of the crew were married, the rest were single. The misfortunes set in quickly, as the crew realized they were missing a vital part for the engine and needed to divert to pick it up. Upon leaving port after retrieving the part, they ran aground on a sandbar. They attempted to get pulled off by a passing ship, but the tow line parted, forcing them to have to wait for high tide. But they finally got underway again the next day, just to run headlong into a low-pressure system, forcing them to battle their way through a severe storm for 3 days straight. Periodically, their small diesel engine would run poorly, or not at all, forcing them to fix it several times underway. She didn't reach her fishing grounds near the Midway Islands until February 7th. The fishing was subpar at best, catching only a handful of tuna, and their misfortune only kept compiling. She lost nearly half of her fishing lines at one point, was only able to locate and recover a fraction of them. Needing to recoup their losses and avoid severe weather, they trawled southwards towards the Marshall Islands, then westwards towards Bikini Atoll, arriving around 100 kilometers east of them around 1:05 a.m. on the morning of March 1st. At 6:45, the U.S. military detonated a thermonuclear device as part of Operation Castle. The Bravo bomb, or Castle Bravo, was a lithium deuteride nuclear hydrogen bomb, and the largest bomb detonated by the United States. It was expected to detonate at 5 to 6 megatons, but something went wrong. The explosion ended up being far larger, nearly 2.5 to 3 times as large, at 15 megatons. 1,000 times the size of the bomb dropped on Hiroshima in 1945. The error in calculation came into the fact that they believed 60% of the bomb's secondary stage to be inert filler, but it reacted and detonated just the same. Being admittedly a deck ape and boat driver, my knowledge is a bit limited when it comes to thermonuclear physics. Kyle Hill of the YouTube channel by the same name does a wonderful video on Castle Bravo, and does a great job of breaking down and explaining the incident Barney style for us less intelligent military types. He goes over it in a very succinct fashion that still manages to go right over my head. But I'd still highly recommend giving the video a watch if you'd like to know more. I'll link the video in the description below. In the single second the fireball created by Castle Bravo was 4.5 miles or 7.2 kilometers across. It left a crater 6,500 feet or 2,000 meters in diameter and 250 feet or 76 meters deep. The mushroom cloud reached 47,000 or 14,000 meters high, the height at which most airlines fly, and 7 miles, 11 kilometers, in diameter. Reaching this in about a minute, it reached 26.6 miles or 40 kilometers high, and 62 miles or 100 kilometers in diameter in less than 10 minutes. expanding at roughly 100 meters per second. At 6:45, the crew of the Daigo Fukuryū Maru looked to the west to see an enormous flash, as if the sun were rising. The light lasted for 3 to 4 minutes, making the fishermen very nervous. 6 to 7 minutes later, they heard a double pop. By this time, the captain had already given the order to pull in lines. But this wasn't a simple process, and took around 6 hours to finish. Within 2 hours, the mushroom cloud had spread wide over their heads, like a looming storm, before a steady rain began to fall. Mixed into the rain were strange white particles. But even as the rain stopped, the white particles continued to fall, like snow. These particles were not hot. They had no odor. One crewman even tasted it and found it had no taste but a gritty sort of texture. It accumulated on the boat like snow, the crewmen leaving footprints in it as they worked. It got in their eyes and mouth, they breathed it in, it gathered in their sweatbands and even got in their underwear. It was everywhere. They were inundated in the snow-like substance. They wouldn't learn until later that this was scorched and vaporized coral and sand, reduced to ash and flung into the atmosphere. Later on called Shi-no-hai, this death ash was also highly irradiated. Mixed into it were such radioactive substances as strontium-90, cesium-137, selenium-141, and uranium-237. The men simply brushed the ash off to speed home, afraid of being spotted by the Americans, thinking they would be imprisoned or even worse for witnessing the test. But that evening, symptoms set in. The men complained of severe pain. Their eyes were red and stinging, but worse still, they had headaches, nausea, dizziness, and diarrhea. Within 3 days, the skin on their faces started to turn abnormally dark, and strange burn-like blisters appeared on their wrists, necks, waistbands, and ankles, places where the ash had accumulated. By a week, their hair began to fall out in small clumps at the root. It took Lucky Dragon number 5 2 weeks in total to return to Yaizu, their voyage in total lasting about 60 days. By some stroke of luck, they came upon another low-pressure system that delayed them in entering port, meaning they couldn't immediately offload their tuna. Upon hearing about what had happened by the ship's owner, they were immediately sent to the hospital, where the surgeon on staff identified it as radiation sickness fairly quickly. It didn't take long for the press to hear of the story and spread it like wildfire. What followed was 14 months of hospitalization and treatment for acute radiation poisoning. Endless antibiotics and blood transfusions as their bodies failed to produce sufficient enough white blood cells. At one point, crew members contracting other infections for the blood transfusions. From March 28, 1954 until May 20, 1955, the crew were hospitalized, fighting for their lives. The first man to be a victim of the hydrogen bomb was Chief Radioman Kobayama Akiichi. He passed away on 23 September 1954 from secondary infections. He was 40 years old and had a wife and children, but he wouldn't be the last. Many others passed away over the years, their lives foreshortened by radiation sickness. In total, 8 of the 23 crew members died between the ages of 40 and 66 due to complications with various cancers and cirrhosis of the liver. What to do with the Daigo was a subject of much debate, some wanting to sink the highly irradiated vessel, others wanting to keep it for research. Ultimately, once the radiation levels subsided, the vessel was open for viewing in Tokyo at the Tokyo Metropolitan Daigo Fukuryū Maru exhibition hall in 1976. Following the incident, there was a worldwide campaign against the usage and testing of nuclear weapons. One of the big voices in the movement was Ōishi Matashichi, one of the crewmen that survived the Castle Bravo bomb. He would campaign at schools and give lectures in Japan about the dangers of nuclear weapons, right up until his death less than a month ago at the time of this video's writing, passing away March 7th, 2021. He wrote several books, and if you'd like to hear his first-hand account of the incident, I highly recommend reading The Day the Sun Rose in the West, Bikini, The Lucky Dragon, and I. For or against nuclear weaponry, it's of vital importance to study and know the effects that these weapons have, and fully understand and appreciate the destructive power that they hold. Castle Bravo affected 7,000 square miles of the Pacific with its radioactive fallout, and killed at least 8, with possibly thousands others affected by it as well. The Daigo Fukuryū Maru stands as a warning of the immense terrible power that the hydrogen bomb can wield.